What it do, cucks? It's your boy the Hater, and it's time for another edition of Wrestler Review. Today we're doing Stevie Richards. I know what you're thinking. Hater, Stevie Richards isn't a big deal. Well, the Hater disagrees. The Hater thinks that Stevie Richards is one of the most underrated wrestlers of all time. And the reality is that he was severely held back for no reason that I can discern, right? So let's get started. First up, we're going to very quickly go over Stevie Richards as a jobber in the beginning of his WWE run, right? There was nothing to write home about here. I'm not going to count this. I'm not going to give it any points just because, he didn't really do anything. You know, he was just there, but, they were just pretty much, they had him there as an extra hand. And I don't even, to be honest, I don't remember him, doing anything. I remember he was there. So when Stevie Richards, became Steven Richards, which is, in my opinion, the beginning of his career, that felt like a debut. Even though he was there, I know he was there, but he didn't do anything. He really wasn't there. I can't remember anything he did. So, that being said, let's start off with the part that makes the most sense. Stevie Richards, right, goes and becomes Steven Richards. He cuts his hair, and he starts, in my opinion, one of the most underrated gimmicks of all time. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to pivot up in this bitch. This is no longer a Stevie Richards video. This is a Right to Censor video featuring Stevie Richards, right? So, with all that being said, well, I guess I'll have to do another video on Right to Censor because this is a Stevie Richards. I have to talk about the rest of his career, right? So, in his role, so back to the origins of this video. So, in his role as the manager for Right to Censor, Stevie Richards, in my personal opinion, goes down as one of the greatest stable leaders of all time, right? Now, not only did Right to Censor have tremendous success in terms of lifting up the careers of people that were pretty much one step away from being released, as evidenced by the fact that they were all basically released after this. But Stevie Richards, more importantly than all of this, Right to Censor was massive, motherfuckers. They were massively over his heels, right? They made everybody look good, and everybody got massive pops when they beat the hell out of Right to Censor. So, real quick, Stevie Richards, number one, even as a presentation of a character, he was presented as this almost like a cult leader, right? This was basically like the Wyatt Six, except with better wrestlers, a better gimmick, obviously, more success, and perhaps most importantly, they have one similarity, and that is that once the Wyatt Six winds down, which is going to happen in less than a year, I would imagine, all those people are going to get released. Like Dexter Lumis is gone, Joe Gacy is gone, Eric Rowan will be released again, Nikki Cross will be released, and Bo Dallas will probably be released. He might stick around a little longer, he might Mustafa Ali it a little bit, but then he's going to be gone too. So this is just like the last salvo. But as far as last salvos go, the Right to Censor was perfect. First of all, it started with Stevie Richards and Bo Buchanan. You couldn't think of someone less relevant at the time than Bo Buchanan, right? This guy was coming off of a pretty, in my opinion, a pretty solid tag team of him and Big Boss Man, which was just two big motherfuckers. It was just a great tag team, right? And Bo Buchanan was just built different, man. This guy's so athletic for his size. It's crazy, right? And then he was they put him in a suit and tie, even though he's a muscular dude, very imposing figure. They put him in a suit and tie, and he's wrestling like nobody's, right? Eventually, he beats Godfather, and then somehow Godfather gets brainwashed, and he becomes the Good Father. Now, I know the Godfather himself didn't like the gimmick of the Good Father because he's gone on record to say that, but in my personal opinion, the Good Father was awesome. The Good Father represents one of the greatest gimmick rebrands of all time, and it's the same thing with everybody in Right to Censor except for Bo Buchanan, right? Next up, Val Venus, right? Val Venus was being managed by Trish Stratus. He had recently cut his hair, and then all of a sudden, Stevie Richards is trying to get him to join, right? And his entire thing is I know you're making the turn, Val. Because Val Venus pretty much dropped the porno gimmick, and he just became a wrestler named Val Venus, who was being managed by Trish Stratus to great success. And Stevie Richards was you're almost there. You're almost there. I can get you to the next level. And Val Venus, in my opinion, had the best run of his career with Right to Censor in terms of the way he was booked. He was wrestling people like The Rock on Monday Night Raw in believable matches, right? He was winning again, right? He was presented as a credible upper mid-carder for the first time ever. He was always a mid-card guy. Now he was an upper mid-card guy. Now, he wasn't an upper mid-card guy in the sense that he's going to win the title anytime soon, right? But if anybody was right below the main eventers, it was Val Venus during this tenure. So, he really, in my opinion, revitalized Val Venus' dying career, because after this, Val Venus became Chief Morley, and then shortly thereafter, he was released, right? After this, we have Ivory, right? Ivory will always be remembered as Right to Censor Ivory, right? Ivory had already had a pretty established career, But she just never got over. She never had a gimmick. And she played the part perfectly well. Right to Censor was amazing. In addition to this, after the group disbanded for no reason whatsoever, I guess they got stale, whatever, right? Stevie Richards then went back to becoming Stevie Richards, right? Now he grew his hair out, and he had 2 memorable stints. Number 1, he had his run with Victoria, where he was Victoria's boyfriend, which was really weird because, it's kind of strange, right? It's like he's supposed to be this right to censor guy, but he completely dropped that. And he started the very memorable Stevie Night Heat, right? He had cool-ass moves. He had a lifting double underhook DDT, which I don't know why people don't use that. Nobody uses that anymore. It was great. The closest thing is Dean Ambrose, but he kind of for him, it's like a brain buster. This was like a lifting double underhook DDT. It's almost like a angel's wings, but he just drops him in a normal DDT instead of in between his legs. Great stuff. He was memorable. He made Monday Night Heat relevant, right? Not relevant in the sense that nobody was watching Monday Night Heat. Sunday Night Heat. But when you're watching it, you're like, oh shit, Stevie Richards is cool, And then after this, shortly thereafter, he was released. But not until he was reintroduced in TNA, where he had another great run as Dr. Stevie. Dr. Stevie was so underrated. First of all, he basically had a stable. The stable was a bunch of people who are fucked in the head. So in his stable, he had Abyss, which was one of his patients, which was great, right? This was just a great run for Abyss. He had matches with Abyss. They were hardcore matches. Stevie Richards put himself through a lot to be, a wrestler. And I quick shout out to the BWO. When he was part of the BWO, the reincarnation of BWO, they had a memorable match, one of the matches that I was looking forward to for a certain pay-per-view. I forget the pay-per-view. But it was the BWO versus the Mexicools, which were also fun. And as BWO, he hit Bradshaw with a chair to the head as hard as he could. It was brutal. It felt real. He was awesome in that too. But back to TNA. In TNA, he was instrumental in a gimmick that I think went really well, right? It reestablished Abyss as a monster, but also as a sympathetic character that was essentially being manipulated by Dr. Stevie, right? In addition, he was able to provide Daphne, who is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. Rest in peace, Daphne. She's probably my second or maybe even first favorite female wrestler, only because of one reason. She got over in WCW and in any other capacity without leaning on her sexuality, despite the fact that she was a very attractive girl. So with all that being said, Daphne, this didn't end well for her because she got thrown around, and I think it screwed up her brain, and she said that that caused her depression, which ultimately led to her taking her own life, which was very sad. So that part of it obviously sucks, but the presentation of it, Daphne was just she got so massively over, in my opinion, in TNA. The people loved her, you know what I mean? Because she was out there willing to take these crazy bumps that nobody was willing to take. So, and I can't attribute all of that to Dr. Stevie, but he played his role very, very well, in my opinion, right? In addition, I've had the privilege of seeing Stevie Richards in independent wrestling shows, right? And I will say this, if you go to independents, even if you go to reputable ones, you see that there's a big difference between the wrestling capabilities as well as the look of all different wrestlers, right? So with that being said, it's Stevie Richards, he really stood out in the independents. He got screwed over in one of them. Some guy interfered and made him lose the match. But you could tell this guy, he was bigger, stronger, better looking than most of the wrestlers on the independents, if not all of the wrestlers in the independents. Because you need a certain level of presentation to make it to WWE in the beginning, right? Now, Steven Richards, in my opinion, was awesome. And I never understood. And this is why, let's do the scores up until now, and we'll give him the booster score. So, obviously, his RTC run, right to censor, that's a 12 out of 10 easy. That's one of the greatest runs of all time, in my opinion, especially for a jobber, when I don't mean disrespect when I say he's a jobber. Then he had the Stevie Night, what's it called? Stevie Night Heat. That was really cool. That one gets a 9. I know it's a Sunday Night Heat thing, but for what it was, it gets a 9, right? He can't help that they didn't put him on TV. It was a good run. A lot of people that get relegated to Sunday Night Heat don't do anything. They don't even try. So he really tried, and he made something out of that. And I will give an 8 out of 10 to his, what's it called? I'll give it a 7 out of 10, to be fair. A 7 out of 10 to his TNA run because he didn't do much. So we've got 12 plus 8 plus 7 puts us at 27, you know what I mean? And that would be divided by 3, but we have to add another score multiplier, right? Stevie Richards, in my opinion, had it all. He was like 6'2". That's another thing. He was always in shape, even when he didn't need to be. He was always in shape. This guy was always chiseled, you know what I mean? And he was not a small guy. Like I said, he was 6'2", you know? 230, 240 pounds easy, right? And he was a very good-looking guy. And that's one thing that I do not understand. When this guy has literally everything that is required to be a pro wrestler. Now, I will concede, even though he was always chiseled, he was never that big, right? So, like, if you were to compare him to, like, Val Venus, you know, Val Venus was probably shorter, but he was more muscular. So he just felt more substantial, right? And he wrestled in a different time. If Stevie Richards wrestled today, in my opinion, he would have had a Seth, and I'm saying it honestly, he would have had a Seth Rollins level of a career because he is bigger than Seth Rollins and he is better than Seth Rollins in nearly every way. You can make the argument that Seth Rollins was better in the ring, but I'm not sure about that. Seth Rollins is excellent in the ring, but I always thought Stevie Richards was great in the ring. He had a great super kick. He just, generally speaking, he would always have these like moves. He had, like I said, the Stevie T, which was the double underhook DDT, and he had the rat trap, which was like a submission move. It was like basically like a full Nelson to a seated opponent, I think, or a full Nelson camel clutch. He had the moves, he had everything, right? But he was the total package because, like I said, he had all the attributes that I just said, and he was crazy charismatic and crazy good on the mic. And he's one of the, like, you know, people say like, oh, they dropped the ball with him. Like they'll say that about people like Rusev or Cesaro, right? Where it's like, no, they didn't. Like, these guys are just mid. Stevie Richards was not mid. He was excellent, but he was plagued by the fact that he was in a different time where, in my opinion, he should have had a better career. You know what I mean? So I got to give him a one-time hater multiplier of another plus 10. So now, well, we still have to divide, cucks. So we had 27 plus 10 is 37. 37 divided by 4 is 9 point something. Who cares? Because in the hater channel, we always round down, motherfuckers. And Stevie Richards gets a 9 out of 10 on Wrestler Review. Now, I know what some of you may be thinking. Hater, how could Stevie Richards get a lower grade than JBL? Well, I personally believe that while JBL, like the JBL gimmick, was one of the easily top 10 gimmicks of all time, I also believe that Right to Censor was one of the top 10 gimmicks of all time. That's why I'm going to do another video about Right to Censor. And with that being said, it's like I can't split hairs here. I can't split the difference, right? I don't know which one's better. I know that when Right to Censor was around in the Attitude Era, right, at the tail end of the Attitude Era, they were one of the most over acts. They were on TV every week, and they had an impact. A long-lasting impact. They had so many good storylines considering what they were. And with all that being said, I can't deny the fact that the other parts of Steve Richards' career, you know, the ones that I remember at least, were awesome, right? And JBL, you know, JBL's great, one of my favorite wrestlers. But for example, people like him, they also had a lot of downturns, right? We also had to tolerate the JBL hardcore turn where he was just walking around with a bull rope for no reason, you know what I mean? We had to tolerate a lot of the APA stuff. Wasn't that good in hindsight, right? The APA stuff was good, but the Acolyte stuff was lame. They were just another tag team. They were basically like FTR. You know what I mean? Like, they brought nothing to the table at that point. So with all that being said, you know, I got to say it like it is. And Stevie Richards, in my opinion, gets a well-deserved 9 out of 10. You know, it's easy nowadays for people to gravitate towards wrestlers that they like, and more importantly, for people to gravitate towards wrestlers that they're told to gravitate towards. But Stevie Richards is one that you were never supposed to gravitate towards. He was someone that you were never supposed to like. He was someone that you never were supposed to think was great, but he was, motherfucks. And that's what makes the hater different. That's what makes Stevie Richards different. That being said, go fuck yourselves.